The Sam Sorbo Show is brought to you in partnership by the Herzog Foundation.
Hi there. What if the place that you send your child every day is quietly dismantling their faith, undermining your authority, and grooming them to reject everything you've taught them? And you don't even see it happening. Stay with me. This is the Sam Sorbo Show. Here we go.
Sam Sorbo.
Sam, welcome back to the program.
I'm glad to welcome Sam Sorbo.
It's great to have you here.
Okay, joining me today is one of the fiercest truth tellers in the fight for our children. I've known this gentleman for quite a while. He's actually a hero of mine. He's the executive director of Public School Exit, and also he's the author of Indoctrinating Our Children to Death. We will be talking about this book. A homeschool dad, an international journalist, an education writer for Freedom Project Media. Alex has dedicated his life to exposing the dark agenda behind government schools and equipping parents to take their children back. Alex Newman, welcome to the show.
So much for having me, Sam.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And I've been waiting for this for a while. I don't know why we haven't done this earlier. We've done a little bit back and forth in the past, but it's been too long, frankly. And you've got this new book out, and it is phenomenal, reminiscent of John Taylor Gatto, who is, of course, our mutual hero. But let's talk about, look, it's out there now. Parents are waking up, but what can they do?
Well, and that's really the ultimate purpose of all of this, right? It's one thing to explain to somebody that they have cancer and they're going to die. That's the bad news, and that's part of what the book does. But the far more important part is, hey, but there's hope. It doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to lose your kids. They don't have to be deconstructed and then reconstructed in the image of these Marxist transgenderism promoting diabolical forces that are determined to capture their hearts and minds. So the first thing, and you and I have both been talking about this for so long, Sam, is you must get them out of the system. That's like step one, right? The most basic thing. But for a lot of people, that's the hardest part, is the leap into something that they don't know, something that seems a little scary. As you have masterfully pointed out, we've been brainwashed to believe that we're not capable of educating our own children by the system that educated us. So the irony is off the charts. But step one, get your kids out. Step two, make good decisions about how they're going to be educated. And I would say the most important source for information on that is going to be the Bible. And then you've got an excellent book out giving people ideas. I've got some ideas in the end of my book. But, I think homeschooling is the gold standard where that's not possible for whatever reason. There are still a lot of great Christian schools. There are great programs. You and I both know Freedom Project Academy. There's Classical Conversations. I mean, there's a lot of really good resources out there for parents who don't think they can handle it all on their own. But the important thing is get them out, find a better option, and follow God's instructions rather than the crazy system that exists.
I like that. And I would say that we've lost the church to a large degree because of our schools, right? Because the schools ignore or disdain the Bible. And so even though you grow up in a Christian household, your faith doesn't have the foundation that it would if your education at home were centered around the Bible, right?
100%, Sam. And, it's hard to track the data on this, but the Nehemiah Institute's done some really good work. And they estimated that something like 80% of Christian children from Christian homes who go through 12 years of so-called government education will leave the faith and will leave the church. Now, Christian education won't save your children. Jesus Christ saves children, but it can't hurt to follow God's instructions. And so what I did in my book, literally chapter 1 goes back to the beginning. Whose idea was it to have the government educate our children? Turns out it was a utopian wackadoodle communicating with spirits named Robert Owen, who thought that education should be a means to an end. And the end was not producing a literate, highly educated society capable of governing itself and glorifying God. Just the opposite. The objective, the end goal, was to fundamentally transform society. And the more you dig into Robert Owen, the more alarmed you will be, right? And again, this is the first guy to seriously propose that the government ought to educate our kids in the modern era. He claimed to be communicating with dead people using Ouija boards. That's where he said he was getting his ideas. He admitted that publicly just a few months before he died. He claimed to be fighting the great trinity of evil, the trinity of evil being marriage, right? The church, Christianity, and private property. Set up a communist commune. And so that was always the plan. Set up a secret society. And one of the whistleblowers who came out said, yeah, on the surface, we were trying to promote the idea that the government should educate kids. But the great object, he said in a book exposing this all, was to get rid of Christianity. So the schools are doing a fantastic job from the perspective of the people who came up with this system in the first place.
Right. It's hard for people to sort of wrap their brains around one or two sort of bad eggs. And you and I know there were more than one or two bad eggs, but there are good people in the schools, right? There are some good teachers. They went to teaching college, but they weren't like indoctrinated with the Marxism. They were just trained to function in the system and to work the system, which I tend to try to go into the weeds on with parents because I want them to understand. But let's talk about, like, what is the outcome? You've got such a great grasp of all the history of this from, say, the turn of last century to the turn of this century. What has been the outcome of our schools? Where are we now as opposed to where we were?
Oh, Sam, it makes you want to cry looking at this stuff. And the reality is they did this so subtly. It's kind of like the old frog in the warming up water, that people didn't notice it was happening. But if you compare where we were at, 1900, say, to where we are today, it would blow your mind. Right? Child suicide was not a thing. Okay. Today, it is the leading cause of death among whole big age groups of our children. Right? Child suicide was not a thing back then. The kids didn't used to come to school with guns and shoot each other. The kids didn't used to stab each other in the bathroom. They didn't used to smoke
did
crack.
Come to school with guns.
Right, exactly, in their truck, so they could, go do fun stuff afterwards, like target shooting, hunting, but not to shoot each other, not to shoot their teachers, not to sell drugs and be a little gangster. So the transformation has been incredible. And on the educational side, just the academics alone, people don't even believe me when I give them the data. You can go back to like literally 250 years ago. You can go back to early 1800, and what you'll find is that in the big cities, we had almost universal literacy, and there's study after study from that time period documenting this. DuPont de Nemours, 1812, did a phenomenal study, National Education in the United States of America. He found that not more than 4 in 1,000 young people could not write legibly and neatly, right? In other words, almost everybody could write legibly and neatly among the young. You look at what Alexis de Tocqueville talked about in 1830s when he came over here. He was astounded that everybody knew the Constitution, their history, their religion. Everybody was well educated. Then you compare that to today, where the government's own data show that less than 1/3 of the victims of this system are even proficient in anything. Right? You look back at 1992. Federal government did the most comprehensive literacy survey they've ever done in this country. And I'm sure they didn't do another one because the results show how bad this is. They found that half of American adults are basically functionally illiterate. Okay. How can it be that we're spending $1 trillion a year on so-called education and half of American adults cannot read? This is by design, folks. So it's impossible to put into words how bad and how quickly this happened. But it is the reality. And if you go back and look at 125 years ago, it was a whole different world. And of course, it's going to get worse before it gets better if we keep doing this.
So I want to point out that you said among young people when you were saying nearly 100% literacy. So why did you specify young people as opposed to just the general public? What was the difference there?
Well, that was what DuPont de Nemours was looking at in his survey. He said among young people, almost everybody could read and write. Now, a lot of these people were, newly arriving from Europe, and Europe was not nearly at the level that the United States was. They were still way ahead of the rest of the world, but a lot of Europe was still way behind where the United States was. And to be clear, I should emphasize this, Sam. We didn't have government schools back then, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It's not like that we had a good public school system back then and it got worse. No, government didn't educate children back then. That was the job of parents. And to the extent that parents needed help, they went to the church or they went to the free market. If you look in Philadelphia, for example, about 225 years ago, there were hundreds of tutors, companies, academies advertising their service. Your children could learn navigation, Hebrew, Greek, mathematics, bookkeeping, like anything they wanted to learn.
Kind of like today.
Right, right.
So despite your schooling, parents are signing up to get tutors for their kids.
That's right. And the free market always provides the things that people want. The problem now is we're just so overburdened with taxes. We've been so dumbed down and we've been so conditioned to believe that the government's going to educate our children that we don't realize we actually do need to provide a real education for them. So the difference is just astounding. And I've gathered, Sam, over the years, every kind of data point you can imagine. I've looked at like presidential speeches in the year 1800 at level of complexity, grade level and stuff. Then you get all the way down to 2000. And it's just a straight downward line. Then you get to 2020 and you have Kamala Harris explaining that Russia big and Ukraine small, right? So it's like, okay, so we're now down to kindergarten level. Excellent. How low can we go?
Is 2 letters, A and I. I mean, seriously, and so I want people to understand the difference in the complexity of the language. Thanks for tuning into the Sam Sorbo Show. You know, we are in a battle for our very nation, a nation that was founded on Christian principles and on the Bible. The 10 Commandments is the basis for our rule of law. But these days, when you go talk to people on the street, you'll find that most of them don't even know what rule of law means. And that's why I'm so proud to have Herzog Foundation as a sponsor of my show. I also love what they do because they seek for the benefit of Christian education throughout the nation. So Herzog Foundation is a wonderful partner for us here at the Sam Sorbo Show. Thanks for watching. Spark curiosity and inspire discovery with Light Lab by Suzanne Schera. This hands-on, engaging curriculum brings science and faith together, exploring topics like energy, light, and the wonders of God's creation. Perfect for homeschooling families, Light Lab helps kids discover and develop a deeper understanding of science while growing their faith. Visit lightlabetc.com and use code SAM10 to get 10% off your order. Illuminate your child's education with Light Lab today. Unlock a world of career possibilities with Praxis, a transformative program designed to help teens skip traditional college and start building a successful career right away. Praxis connects young people with real-world job opportunities, mentorship, and hands-on experience in fields like marketing, sales, and business development. Their teen course equips students with the skills they need to thrive in today's competitive workforce. Visit discoverpraxis.com/teen-course and use code SAM15 to get 15% off the teen course. Don't wait for a degree to start your career. Take the first step today with Praxis. I want people to understand the difference in the complexity of the language. You have subordinate clauses. Most people don't even know what I mean when I say a subordinate clause, with conjunctions and complex sentence structure that doesn't exist today because we lack not only the attention span, but we lack the ability to hold thoughts in our heads. So to explain it better, when my kids were growing up, they would ask me how to spell something. And I would like something, okay? And I would say SOMETHING. And they'd say, wait, slow down. And I'd say, no, you listen to the whole word, and then you repeat it back to yourself. That's how you learn. That's how you exercise your brain. You don't go S and then O and then next letter. And so what we're talking about is people had a facility because they were used to using their brain in this way to hold the first part of the sentence in their head while they read the second, third, and fourth parts of the sentence, the phrases, right? And then at the end, they could put it all together and know exactly what the person was talking about. We don't have that today.
That's exactly right.
We have clip sentences, MTV style, right? And there's a reason for that. What's the reason?
We have been deliberately and systematically dumbed down. And again, I'll emphasize that again because people struggle with that. We have been deliberately dumbed down. There were actual people who actually wanted you and your children to be dumb, who set out to actually make you dumb. And we have the smoking gun evidence of this. One of the essays that I think is critical to understanding John Dewey. John Dewey is kind of known as the father of the modern public education system. He wrote an essay in 1898, before he was even a big deal, called The Primary Education Fetish. And in this essay, he essentially argues that we really don't need to spend all this time teaching little kids how to read and how to write and how to do math. We could worry about that stuff later. What they really need when they're young is lots of collectivization. We need to socialize them. We need them to understand that they're part of the group, and we need them to understand group dynamics and work well with the group and subordinate their individual interests to the group. And so he actually articulates in this essay a plan to dumb down the population. And he says in there, and you could tell this was nefarious because he uses the language of a conspirator. He says, and I'm quoting almost verbatim, I don't have the quote in front of me, but he says, change must come gradually. To force it unduly would compromise its final success by favoring a violent reaction. So he understood that if parents and teachers and school board members understood what they were doing, they would have been tarred and feathered. But that was the plan. We got to make them dumb, but we got to do it slowly, because if they figure it out, they're going to react with violence.
I mean, it reminds me of what the founder of Planned Parenthood said about Black people. Like, we need to eliminate Black people, but we can't let them know that that's what our plan is.
Yep.
And they subvert the actual message, and that's the whole idea. But it's very hard for us, because I went to school and I felt like I was educated. I mean, it was torture, so it must have been worth something. And I think a lot of people agree. And I think also, Alex, I think that people are afraid to admit, how do I put this? So they feel like they didn't succeed, but that's on them. It's a personalized failure. But where they did succeed, they corporatize the success. So they hold the school credible with whatever their success might be, but they personalize and hold themselves only accountable for where they've failed.
Yeah, that's right. And that's because not 1 in 1,000 Americans understand that this was part of the plan. They still operate in the paradigm that the school system is to educate you so that you can do things with your life and get a good job and all the rest. They don't understand that it's exactly the opposite. Its job is to handicap you. Now, as you pointed out, there are still some great people within the system, and I thank God for them trying to be a light in a very, very dark place. But the reality is the system was designed to do this. And when you go back to John Dewey, right, here's a guy who loved the Soviet Union and wrote extensively about what a great system they had, how the Soviets were doing a great job instilling a collectivistic mentality in the minds of these poor children, teaming up then with John D. Rockefeller. Right, Rockefeller gave millions of dollars to this guy. Now, he wasn't a communist. I mean, don't get me wrong, John D. Rockefeller, he was a totalitarian. He didn't like competition because he thought he should own everything. But so he set up this thing called the General Education Board. Yes. Probably the biggest philanthropy in air quotes of the day. And he hired a guy to run it called Frederick Gates. And this guy wrote a lot too, like John Dewey. They wrote Gates, yes. No relation to Bill Gates. I did I did look it up. And officially, at least, there's no tie to Bill Gates there. But this guy openly said in a letter, and again, I don't have the quote in front of me, but something to the effect of, in our vision, these people are going to yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. And, we don't need scientists and men of letters and preachers or even attorneys. We got plenty of those. We want this folk to be putty in our hands so we can mold them and shape them. And we want them to have humbler ambitions. So John Dewey and the communists and a super capitalist walk into a bar and they decide to dumb down all your kids. It sounds like the start of a bad joke. It's actually the reality. So Rockefeller gave millions of dollars to John Dewey, sets up this experimental school when he was still at the University of Chicago. They graduate a bunch of kids after wasting millions of dollars on this. They can't read, they can't write, they can't do math, they can't tell right from wrong. And they conclude not, oh, wow, we messed up big time. They conclude this will be perfect. So he moves over to Columbia and then spreads this through the entire education system in this country.
It's hard to believe because it seems so entirely nefarious, but you have to understand that people who have this elitist mentality, and we recognize it now, we see it more than not, right? We see it a lot. They have this mentality that the stupid people should just remain stupid. There's really no reason to teach them how to read because they're just going to be stupid and they just have to work the factory. And that is why we have factory schools. It was to condition young people for a factory job, which they would work until their fingers bled and they dropped dead. And that was the plan. And for a super capitalist, which is what you're talking about, this was perfect. He wanted people who simply followed directions and, didn't think, which is why I always say schools teach you to not think. That's the purpose of the school. What can people get out of this book? What is your hope for this book? And then I want to talk about some of the other things that you're up to.
Well, my big hope is that people will treat this crisis with the urgency it deserves, right? We're literally, and I mean literally, right? A lot of people throw out that word now for everything. No, I mean literally, we're going to literally lose our country, our freedoms, our families, everything that we hold dear. Your church, pastor, you're too scared to speak about these things on Sunday morning. You're going to lose the vast majority of those children in your congregation if you don't get serious about this issue. So my hope and my prayer is that people, both parents, pastors, and even policymakers will understand that this is an existential threat to everything we hold dear, and that they will take action like their children depend on it, because they do. So, that'll look different for everybody. I would love for everybody to start homeschooling and, Christian education for everybody. That'd be great. But if we can just rescue millions of children out of the system, that might be enough to at least rebuild from the ashes of this crashing system that is going to crash if we're not serious about of stopping this. So my hope is that it will give people an accurate diagnosis of the problem, the history. How did we get here? Right? You can't start treating a disease until you have an understanding of what the disease is. The system is not broken. It's working very well. And now we need to recognize not only do we have a problem, there are actually simple solutions. So that's my hope, is that millions of children will be rescued from this fake education and will receive a real God-honoring, legitimate education that will teach them how to think, that will teach them how to reason, that will teach them how to build, that will teach them how to educate themselves, and that will teach them to know God above everything. And I realize that's a very grandiose and wild ambition, as a wild hope, but it's starting to happen already, thanks to your efforts and the efforts of so many others, and it's so critical. So I'm hoping we can get that done.
We've done this before. Okay, during the revolution, there was a small remnant of people who said, we think we got to go the way of the revolution because King George is not behaving and he doesn't honor his commitments, and he's being punitive, and it's just not going to work. And they had forces arrayed against them, the largest navy in the world, the greatest military in the world, and they just stuck to, forgive me, they stuck to their guns. And so that's what we need. But I want to, so the book is called Indoctrinating Our Children to Death. And the subtitle is Government Schools War on Faith, Family, and Freedom and How to Stop It. Why are you saying that it's dire? Aren't kids just they're just getting a little bit off track? Like, won't they be able to recoup after they leave school and sort of get their lives figured out? I mean, I did, and I don't know where you went to school, but other people did. They went to school, they didn't learn a whole lot, and then they got it figured out after they, left college or whatever.
Yeah. And obviously some will come through okay. And you and I think, are both examples. I didn't go to the public school. I went to very elite private schools in Mexico, Brazil, Switzerland, basically where they're training up the future managers of the New World Order. And so thankfully I got a very good education in terms of academics, but it was heavily focused on promoting the elitist mindset, the secular mindset, the we're better than all those others and we need to learn how to govern them for their own good. So that was kind of my background
to that, because I've seen postings on social media that there are like two tracks for education itself. There's the dunce track, and then there's the world elite track. Like, you're being groomed and you're going to go to Harvard, and then you're going to, get a job at Goldman Sachs, and you're going to run the company or whatever. Hi there. After my family and I started homeschooling, not long after, I decided to plan a trip to Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area. And we went with another family, and my kids had a blast. We visited all over D.C. I ran them ragged, but we had such a great time. And it's a trip that I really want other homeschool families to be able to enjoy. So I've organized a trip from April 12th to April 18th of 2026 just for homeschool families. And we will be seeing some amazing sites. We'll go to Ford's Theater, where the Lincoln assassination took place. We'll go to the Spy Museum. We're going to see, of course, all the memorials. We will see some government buildings. Also, Mount Vernon is one of my favorite places where George Washington made his home, and the National Zoo, the Museum of the Bible, the Smithsonian, and also Arlington Cemetery. So please join me. This is one of the best things you can do as an American homeschool family. But even if you're coming from abroad, you're more than welcome. I hope to see you there. One of my favorite products that I've recommended to a number of people is Neuromatic's Quiet Brain Oil. Quiet brain is what I need when I'm trying to go to sleep. What's great about Neuromatic's Quiet Brain Oil, it's a unique proprietary blend of essential oils, very pure and therapeutic grade essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, lavender, and sandalwood. And I love it. It helps me sleep at night. And most importantly, it's very easy to travel with. That first night in a hotel for me is always a little bit dicey. Am I going to sleep well? And with Neuromatic's Quiet Brain Oil, really helps me. So I highly recommend it. You can get it at sorbostudios.com, and we'll see you there. Are you looking for quality homeschooling resources? Apologia offers top-notch curriculum for all ages. It's designed to inspire a love of learning and a strong foundation in faith. Head over to apologia.com and use code SORBO10 to get 10% off your next purchase. Equip your children with the best education tools and save today at Apologia, the trusted choice for homeschooling families. Hey there, if you're enjoying today's episode, take a moment, leave me a 5-star review, please. This is the way that people will be able to discover these conversations. And by the way, I will be reading some of these reviews on air. So whether yours is poignant or humorous or simply thoughtful, take a moment, leave me the review, and maybe yours will be the one that is chosen to read on air and share with the world. Thanks so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. I appreciate you. I've seen postings on social media that there are like two tracks for education itself. There's the dunce track, and then there's the world elite track. Like you're being groomed and you're going to go to Harvard and then you're going to, get a job at Goldman Sachs and you're going to run the company or whatever.
It's absolutely the case. And again, the schools that I went to growing, I eventually got kicked out. I did not think highly of the schools I was in. I got kicked out in 10th grade and never went back. And, that's maybe a story for another day. But that is absolutely the mindset that they instill in these kids. These are the children of billionaires and prime ministers and CEOs of the big companies and diplomats and bigwigs at the UN. And they have a totally different outlook on everything, right? They did teach me how to read. Praise God. They did teach me how to think. They taught me logic. They taught me a lot of stuff that came in very useful once I came to know the Lord and decided to apply my talents and my education to something useful rather than something destructive or worse. So I'm grateful for that. But, this really is so serious. And to your question about, can kids recover from this? Yes. But they've gotten so good at this, Sam. They've gotten so good at this. And to go back to the Christianity issue that we kind of started off with, John Dewey actually started a new religion. Now, people don't realize that. He was the founder, him and about 30 of his buddies. They created a new religion called humanism. And they wrote the Humanist Manifesto. And people can read this today. Now it's called Humanist Manifesto 1 because they've released subsequent editions. But the implications of this religion are very profound, right? The first plank of the religion is we believe the universe is self-existing and not created, which not incidentally is a direct contradiction of the first words in the Bible, right? God created in the beginning the heavens and the earth. It also has very profound political implications. Our system of government is based on what our founding fathers said was the self-evident truth that God created us, that he gave us unalienable rights, life, liberty, these things came from the Bible, but they are self-evident, as Romans 1 says. And you cannot believe John Dewey's false religion and in basic Americanism, certainly not in Christianity or the biblical understanding of the world at the same time. They are
Right.
inherently opposed to each other. And so what happened is, little by little, John Dewey's religion came to replace Christianity. And then that was institutionalized by the Supreme Court in 1962, 1963. They said, no more Bible, no more prayer. And to his credit, the justice who wrote the dissent here, Justice Potter Stewart, actually, he hit the nail on the head. He said, what we've done here is not create neutrality with respect to religion. Just like Jesus said, you're either with me or against me, right? So Potter Stewart went on to say, what we've done here is we've established the religion of secularism. And of course they did. They forced our children to learn this false religion from the pit of hell. They forced us to pay for it. And just one more thing on this, Sam. This was not really a new religion, right? And John Dewey, I'm sure, thought he was being really clever and, we're so great, we're coming up with a new religion. It's the oldest lie in the book. The idea that there is no real God, right? Did God really
Tower of
say,
Babel.
ye shall be as gods,
Yes.
knowing good and evil? It's the same satanic lie from the beginning. And that now has been instilled in the minds of several generations of children, not as a possible truth, but as the truth, as the lens through which we see the world. So yes, some kids, hard to know how many, but some children will come out and say, wow, I was lied to. I was terribly deceived. God is real. I didn't come from slime over billions of years with no God. But the majority, it seems like, are going to be incapable of coming to those conclusions. And again, Jesus Christ does the really important work of salvation. But when it comes to being able to think properly, being able to train yourself to read, it is possible, but it's very, very difficult. And I'm afraid the vast majority of the victims are never going to be able to fully recover.
And I think that's why in the Bible it says, whoever causes the least among these to stumble, or, it is better to have a millstone tied around his neck and he be thrown into the ocean or the sea, because children are vulnerable. They need to be protected. And we're literally putting them into these indoctrination camps where they are taught that they have no value. And that's a horrible thing to teach a child, that he's just a collection of accidents, that he has no value. And it's no wonder. I just wrote an article about how and you started the show with, child suicide is up. We have anxiety that's off the charts in our young people. And some of that has to be this nihilism that has infected our schools.
There's no question. And we see the fruit, Sam, right? The Bible says, look at things and judge it by its fruit. Well, what has been the fruit of this education system? We know what the fruit of our original education non-system was. It was the greatest, freest, most prosperous society in the history of humanity, right? America.
Exactly.
What is the fruit of the current system? Well, you're looking at it, folks. Go drive through downtown of a big American city. You're going to see people addicted to drugs. You're going to see people sleeping on the streets. I mean, look at our border. Look at what is happening to our society. It is unraveling. And this is the direct result. It is the fruit of this false religion, this false education system that has captured the hearts and minds of the vast majority of our people.
It's just occurred to me, in our inner cities, the inner cities are the ultimate expression of our schools, right? They are the schools that are fully funded by the government. Parents don't get as involved because I can't afford to. They probably don't have time. They're busy doing other things, whatever. That is where we're headed. And nobody seems to be able to say, oh, wait a minute, we think that that's the aberration, and that school is actually the little red brick building that, all the kids are playing very happily and they're so, excited to raise their hand in class. So it just occurred to me that was really the case. And it's sad because that inner city model is what is expanding. And the other model, from Columbine to here in South Florida, to all of the other instances, we're locking down schools, we're putting children behind bars. I mean, it's really disastrous.
Yeah. And Sam, it was deliberate. I'm glad you mentioned this. You mentioned Margaret Sanger a little bit earlier. I should have jumped on this then. John Dewey's disciples and buddies were intimately tied in with the eugenics movement, which, of course, Margaret Sanger was maybe the premier expression of the eugenics movement. A lot of her founding board members inspired Adolf Hitler. And, of course, Rockefeller was the big source of funding for the eugenics movement. But if you look at John Dewey's disciples, and we've got several chapters on this in a book I co-wrote in 2014 called Crimes of the Educators, they deliberately targeted the Black community for the pioneering of the dumbed down indoctrination masquerading as education. Now everybody's getting it, right? So we may be a few years behind, but that was very deliberate. They viewed Black people as inferior. They said they don't need a real education. They're consigned to this lot in life. They're genetically inferior, and so therefore let them have this fake dumbed down education. And so many of John Dewey's collaborators, co-conspirators, were leading luminaries in the eugenics movement, and this continues all the way up to the global level. When you look at the founding of UNESCO, the UN's education agency, which right now is working to standardize education around the world, the guy they put in charge, the first leader.
School. Don't call it education. It's school.
Right.
They have nothing to do with education. It's all school.
You're right. And so their name, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, is a fraud in and of itself. But the first guy they put in charge, Julian Huxley, was the head of the British Humanist Association.
Of course.
John Dewey, pick up the red phone, and the head of the British Eugenics Society, the same wackadoodles who believe some races are better than other races and we should selectively breed people like cows to make superhumans. This is not a coincidence, folks. Quit being a coincidence theorist. These people were working together. They've got a fundamentally flawed understanding of humanity and reality, and those terrible views have now brought our society literally to the brink of destruction.
Yeah, I see it. I see it also. So let's talk briefly about public school exit. And you've been with them for a very long time. Did you help found it?
Yes. Dran Reese, me, and Ray Moore were the three kind of founders of it. We're all volunteers. None of us in fact, a lot of us invest our own resources in this. But we started this right after the 2019 speaking tour I did on education. So we've been around for about 5.5 years now, and we're so grateful for your participation and your help. So
what is the point of public school exit? And so talk me through a little bit of what you guys do and represent.
Well, the main purpose is to get as many children out of this government school system, the public school system, as physically, humanly possible in the shortest amount of time possible. And so we are working to educate parents on the need for this. We're working to educate pastors on the need for this. And we're also working to facilitate this exodus. So we're partnering with all kinds of amazing ministries that have the ability to help churches, help families do the things that they need to do. And it's truly amazing seeing the fruit of this. We've got people all over the country, all over the world now who are using our resources, using our materials. We're making connections for people who want to start schools, who want to start co-ops. But that's really the goal. Get as many children into real education as quickly as possible.
You offer a 5-step plan. So talk to me briefly about that so people can be aware.
Yep. So we've got the whole outline there of how you need to do this process. And again, it starts at step 1, which is make the right decision to pull your children out. And then there are a few technical things you got to do. What are the state laws in your state? Do you need to write to your superintendent? Do you need to, or do you just pull them, whatever it is. But make sure you follow the law to the largest extent possible. And then, you choose what kind of curriculum do we want to use? Do we want to join this co-op or that co-op, or maybe no co-ops, or maybe 3 co-ops? Figure out your philosophy of education, figure out what resources you're going to use, team up with other people, work with your church if possible to help set up something that can be broader, that can bring in more families. So there's a lot there. And actually, we're going to be doing this summer, I'm sure you're participating as well, the summer teaching program where we're going to offer tips for parents and for pastors on how to actually do all this. Every Friday, we have a free consultation call. So parents or pastors who kind of don't know where to start, we've got a paid staff in California that are there to answer your questions. So many resources, all available free of charge to people. So
right. Because it's imperative that kids get out of these horrible, horrible places. And a lot of parents, their knee-jerk reaction is, I can't. And the one excuse that they all hit upon eventually is it's too expensive. Discover the wonders of biblical history with Biblical Excavations by David Nekrutman. Teach teens to love the Bible, defend their faith, and know God more deeply with a unique collection of educational resources that bring the ancient world of the Bible to life. Visit biblicalexcavations.com/curriculum and use code SAM to get 10% off your next purchase. Dive into God's Word and enrich your homeschooling journey today. Protect your family from harmful and explicit content online with Canopy, the only solution that filters and monitors in real time. With Canopy, you can rest easy knowing your children are browsing safely and securely. Visit canopy.us and use code SAM20 to get 20% lifetime discount on any subscription. Keep your loved ones safe online with Canopy today. Give your friend the very best with farm to pet dog treats made from 100% single human grade ingredients. These treats never include byproducts, binders, fillers, additives, preservatives, or artificial ingredients. Just pure, wholesome goodness. Visit farmtopettreats.com and use code SAMSORBO to get 25% off your next order. Treat your dog to healthy, delicious snacks they will love today. What do you say to somebody who says it's too expensive?
You have no idea how expensive it's going to be to leave your child in this. I mean, and I don't just mean the monetary side of it, right? When they come home as a transgender, they're drug addict, whatever. The monetary cost is going to be bad enough, but the spiritual, the academic, the moral, the social cost is going to be far more than you can bear. So yes, it costs money.
That's a really good point, but I have to slip in edgewise. It's not expensive.
I agree.
To home educate your child. You don't need to buy the most expensive curriculum out there. You don't need to pay tuition. And I mean, I'll just share this with you because I've gotten to the point where I've understood children are curious. If you leave them alone, they will teach themselves.
That's right.
So all you need to be is the guide for them. And if you've got a computer or access to a computer with the proper parental controls, your child can learn literally anything that they want to learn. And eventually they will want to learn everything if you give them the character, if you give them the moral instruction that they need.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, Sam. I was going to point that out too. When my wife and I moved back here from overseas, the government went crazy and started terrorizing homeschool families and shutting down private schools that wouldn't obey. When we got back here, we made almost no money, way below the poverty level. And so, we drove one really old car and we lived in a really small house and we ate a lot of rice and beans, but praise the Lord, we were able to homeschool and it was so much fun. People have this mistaken idea about homeschooling that like you need to kind of redo what the government school does and you got to spend 8 hours a day and you got to have every modern convenience. Baloney. I mean, a good parent can homeschool for a few $100 a year and do infinitely better than what the government schools do. And I say that unequivocally. You actually can't do worse than the government schools because they were designed to hurt your child. So knowing that, this should be a very, very simple process. But yeah, I mean, you can homeschool well for almost nothing. There are programs out there to help people who do need some financial help. Classical Conversations, which me and my kids are involved in. They've got some of that. Freedom Project Academy has a scholarship fund. Homeschool Legal Defense Association has a scholarship fund. Public School Exit has helped some people with this.
Yeah.
So and your church, right? Churches, right, I think, should be working to help their congregations find a way to afford good Christian education. So you can do it, folks. You can't not do it, and the cost will not be nearly as bad as you think it will be.
What's amazing is, when we think of home education, a lot of people think, oh my gosh, that's going to be $20,000 a year or something, right? Because we have these inflated costs of sending children to school. Yep. And they're completely inflated. There's no reason that they should be that expensive, except that it's a bureaucracy or it's a private elite school. And so they can, because of supply and demand. But if you just keep your kids home and feed them, they'll learn everything. They will simply learn. And of course, I'm on board with Classical Conversations. Also, Freedom Project Academy, I think is outstanding. Yep. And I'm almost glad that I didn't discover it because I learned so much by doing Classical Conversations with my kids that Freedom Project Academy would have allowed me to shirk and not earn that much because they sort of take care of it for a very low cost. They've got very low cost options. I don't know how they keep their costs that low. They do an amazing job. So, okay. Last but not least, I typically ask all of my guests 3 questions. The first one we covered a little bit, your education background. So you're a high school dropout. Did you also drop out of college, never go to college?
It was worse than dropout. I was asked not to come back, which is the polite way of saying you are expelled. You don't show your face here anymore.
I'm sure your parents were so proud.
Oh, you can't even imagine. Oh, wow. It was a different time in my life. I did not know the Lord. And, frankly, I'm grateful that I didn't spend any more time at school. It was just, as you know very well, school is not education. So, it was a total waste of time. But I didn't do most of college. I came back to the U.S. after living in Africa for a while and took a bunch of these, they call them CLEP tests or whatever. So I got most of my AA degree. I just was able to take tests to get out of. Again, the education I had where I was so far advanced relative to what the poor kids in government brainwash camps here are doing that, I got 99s on every one of my, GEDs. I aced every one of the CLEPs I took. So, and that's not because I'm smart, by the way. It's just because the poor kids in the government schools are being deliberately dumbed down. And then I did do about 1.5 years at the University of Florida to get a bachelor's degree in journalism. Almost a total waste of time, but I did get, the little piece of paper, mostly Marxism masquerading as education.
How often are you asked to show that little piece of paper?
Never. I have never had one single client or employer say, could you please show me your college degree? Never happened. So.
Right. Okay. What advice would you give your younger self?
Man, that's a good one, Sam. I like that question. First of all, read your Bible, right? Every day, all the time. Don't believe the haters in the schools that are telling you that it's fiction or that it's oppressive. That's where you're going to find the real answers to the really important questions in life. I wish I had discovered that long before I did. I would have saved myself a lot of heartache, a lot of trouble, would have wasted a lot less money. And I probably would have been in a much better place today had it not been for all those lost years. So I would definitely tell my younger self, read the Bible, honor your parents, right? Man, it took me a long time to realize that my parents actually knew a lot and that they were pretty decent people and that they were trying really hard to do a good job with me. So, I, as you can probably infer, I was somewhat of a troubled youth. And so, I would tell my younger self, don't do that stuff, you idiot. Don't do that stuff.
Well, you got 6 kids now, so you're about to go through the ringer yourself.
It's happening every day.
They'll be fine.
But praise the Lord. I learned a lot of lessons coming to know the Lord and reading the Bible that I wish I had known when I was younger. And so now I'm able to apply those to my kids. And we get Ephesians 6:4 a lot. Papa, you're provoking us to anger. You've met quite a few of my kids.
Exactly.
But I like it that they're going to the scripture for arguments. And it's just such a joy. And I'll tell you what, even my least well-behaved children are orders of magnitude better than I was on my best day. And so I'm grateful to God for the instructions that he's given us in the Bible. When you follow God's instructions, things really do work out much better.
Yeah, I think so you didn't grow up with the Bible, obviously. Your parents weren't Christian?
We were my dad used to joke that we were CEO Catholics. We would go to Catholic church on Christmas and Easter only.
Right,
That's the CEO. But no, we were never really serious about our faith.
So even Christian children who go to public school are misbehaved. And I was talking to somebody the other day and she's like, I couldn't believe this kid couldn't look me in the eye, was totally out of control. And it's almost to a child now. It's because it's such chaos in the schools, because the schools are lying to children. And I think that is a dis-ease. It creates a dis-ease in the children because they can't trust anybody. They can't trust authority. They don't trust their parents. Their parents are sending them into that. And then they don't trust that because those people are lying to them, most demonstrably so, Yep. Oh, you're a little boy. You could be a girl. What's your pronoun? To a 6-year-old. Like, what are you doing to that? They don't even know what a pronoun is yet. And you're saying, well, what are your pronouns? Let me explain it to you. So anyway, last question, most urgent cultural shift needed in the country today.
our understanding of education and government. We have radically departed from the biblical understanding of education and government that were foundational in all of the blessings that we take for granted today. Like, the peace that we enjoy, the prosperity that we enjoy, the liberty that we enjoy, the security that we enjoy, all of that stemmed from the biblical understanding of our forefathers on two key issues: education and government. And we have radically lost. I mean, we've still got the institutions there and they've still got a little bit of momentum, but as that understanding fades from memory, if we don't rekindle that understanding, government will become the most terrifying force for evil that is imaginable, and education will become what it has become, a system of industrialized child destruction. And so we've got to go back to the Word of God to get our understanding and information about both of those key issues.
Alex Newman, the name of the book is Indoctrinating Our Children to Death. I'm putting it up again because it's fabulous. You should read this because you need to be informed about what's happening, even if you don't have children in the school. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's a great honor. Thank you, Sam. And thanks for all that you do.
So that's it for me. I will see you next time. This is the Sam Sorbo Show. Remember, speak truth and speak it boldly.
The views and opinions expressed in the Sam Sorbo Show are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views and positions of the Herzog Foundation.